did you feel imposter syndrome at all, kind of going into Oxford, surrounded by people who perhaps had more privileged upbringings?
Yeah, 100%. I was walking into a very alien environment, like the dreaming spies of Oxford. Like even physically, it's a very intimidating space, and a far cry from Morley in West Yorkshire. And I met people from lots of different backgrounds, so people who were privately educated, and growing up in West Yorkshire, like very few people go to private schools. Almost everyone's state educated, and they met people who they grew up in nice townhouses in West London, multi-million pound houses. I remember distinctly going to like a house party in the sort of holiday between terms of my first year, and it was in this like multi-million pound townhouse in Fulham. I was like, wow, this house costs more than every single house in my street put together. So it was a kind of introduction to another world, and I did feel a great sense of imposter syndrome. But for me personally, it was transformative because it also enabled me to build a very different type of network as well. Like I mentioned, I was one of the lucky ones who, going to university, I started to be able to speak to lots of different people. I think just having the badge of going to Oxford as well as a massive signalling device, which still holds a lot of currency. So it was a game changer for me in terms of accumulating what academics, I suppose, would call like social capital, cultural capital as well. And my thought was, is there a way to do this which doesn't require someone to go to one particular institution? Because only a limited number of people can go to a particular university. It's a scarce resource. There's only so much capacity in a college based city. I thought there must be a way to kind of democratize and scale access to this, and that's where the nub of the idea for Zero Gravity came from. Okay,
so you graduated, you didn't do the corporate route. Did you immediately go into entrepreneurship and start it?
Yeah, so I had job offers when I finished university, had an offer to become a commercial solicitor, a Slaughter and Mayor training contract, which I turned down. And that was a massive decision at the time because those training contracts to go work in commercial law, like the quantums of money offered are humongous.
Yeah, for a graduate as well, it's crazy to enter your working world already on a much higher salary than a lot of people who have been doing it for years,
Yeah, like once you qualify at the age of 24, you can be on like six figures, like well over six figures. A lot of these elite law firms, and for someone like me coming from a town where the sort of average salary is probably around 22k a year, that's a huge amount of money to turn down. And my family, my friends, I think thought I was a bit nuts in all honesty. But I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was my passion. I'd seen this problem from growing up in West Yorkshire and going to university that I wanted to solve. So when I graduated, rather than going to London, I actually moved back into my childhood bedroom in Morley in West Yorkshire, which was difficult. I became sort of slightly socially dislocated from my friends who were all moving to London to start their grad jobs. And there was a lot of self-doubt, but also doubt from my kind of social circles as well. Like I don't think anyone really thought it was possible to be able to build a business straight out of university with no experience and resources. And in many ways, they're right. The statistical odds of building a business without friends and family funding are pretty damn low. And 9 out of 10 founders in the UK are from the most affluent backgrounds. And that's because, to succeed, you've got a huge advantage if you've got access to financial capital, a network, the inside track from mentors. And I didn't have any of that. So there was a lot of self-doubt, but also doubt from my network as well. And it's only really nowadays, now that Zero Gravity's grown, you've got big clients, raised investment, a lot of the social trappings of success at the early stage, that people think, that wow, it's great being an entrepreneur. You must have a fantastic, day in the life, and it must be really cool running a company. That sort of mentality wasn't there in the early days. People thought I was bonkers for starting a company, and I think that culture around entrepreneurship in the UK is still massively underpowered versus the US, like especially outside of London. Outside of London, there's almost no culture at all around starting a business, certainly a tech business. So it's no wonder that people don't get on and start businesses, because if you don't have support from your personal network to do something so difficult, challenging, psychologically demanding, very few people are going to start those sort of businesses. And I probably only did it because I was sort of so passionate about the issue I was solving, but also a bit chippy as well. I'd always been someone who'd sort of thrived on being the underdog and doubted it a little bit. but the vast majority of people, I think, need support in order to get going.
What about, let's just talk about entrepreneurship for a second, because I echo what you're saying. You know, I, similar to you, didn't come up with a privileged background. I bootstrapped my businesses. I've never raised investment, and you're right. It's a lot harder when you're trying to scrap and grind and almost do it yourself with no network, no money, no connections, and that's a very small percentage of companies that are able to become successful that start on that journey, right? Talk to us a little bit about entrepreneurship. You've now gone through the journey of starting something, building it, raising cash, getting an office, building a great team, getting something out there which really is benefiting the world and the community and everyone else in between. Talk to us about, I suppose, for those that are about to start that journey themselves, people that want to become entrepreneurs, maybe they're working for a company, they're thinking about leaving, starting their own, building their own venture. What advice would you give to them? What advice would you give to yourself if you could speak to your younger self and talk about before you'd gone on that journey? What insights would you give around the topic of entrepreneurship in the UK, and I guess being a young entrepreneur as well?
Yeah, it's a topic I'm really passionate about because, as I mentioned, 9 out of 10 founders are from the most affluent backgrounds. Yeah. And I was very keen, once Zero Gravity had sort of taken off, that I wanted to become the kind of advocate for that 1 out of 10, the people who do come from backgrounds where it's unorthodox to be an entrepreneur. And I have people who slide into my LinkedIn DMs every day who are starting businesses from these backgrounds. They always ask me, what's the kind of magic sauce or the inside track to success? And I don't think there's a kind of one-size-fits-all approach, but I do think there are certain bits of wisdom that I wish I'd known at the age of 21 that I do know now. And one of them is, I think, around strategy and focus. Now, people throw around the word strategy, but to be honest, when I was 21 years old, I had no idea what strategy actually meant. It's one of those words you say, but you don't actually really know what it means. And one of these ideas I quite like is this idea of strategy as sacrifice, which is, when you start a business and you've got a vision in your head, an idea about how to change the world, it's very easy to become overexcited and sort of start planning out your empire. We're going to do this, and the product's going to have all these features. But the reality is, when you're starting, you've got almost no resources. You have to be so focused and selective about what you do. And what strategy really is actually working out what not to do. So one of the first things you should do as a founder is essentially plot out what your key milestones are going to be to get your business through the first 6 months and 12 months, and choose those very selective things you're going to focus on. So it may be that one day you want to build the world's best B2C social brand, but you really need to do that in your first 6 months to get to the first sort of 1 or 2 milestones you need to get to. And so that idea of strategy as sacrifice, focusing on a few key things, creating milestones, I think is incredibly important. And that's something I learned very quickly, because at the beginning of my journey, I wanted Zero Gravity to be everything to everyone. And I realized I was way too stretched. And when I actually just doubled down on a couple of things and let some things just sit for a while, I was able to move much, much faster. So strategy as sacrifice, I think, is important. I think that the second one is regarding technology as well. I was really embarrassed when I first started my business that we didn't have very good proprietary technology. The first version of the platform was an MVP that I'd created myself. I had really good front-end skills that I'd self-taught. My back-end skills were very basic, and I created this really basic MVP. And I remember just being constantly embarrassed that the technology wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, and I had this vision in my head, and the technology just hadn't caught up quickly enough. And because I didn't have the resources to immediately hire a team of devs, I had to get pretty scrappy with the technology. But actually, I think that turned out to be one of the best decisions I made by accident, which is when you're starting, you just want to validate the concept behind your business. And the weird thing about human beings, whether you're selling to consumers or whether you're selling to human beings within a business, is they don't always act the way you think they're going to act. Now, you can have the best product intuition in the world, but 50% of the time, you're going to launch something you think is going to work, and it's not going to work quite the way you initially assumed. So the thing you need to think about is, how can you, as cheaply, as quickly as possible, get a product to market that people can use? And I think for a lot of people, that means getting pretty scrappy with technology in the early days. There's so many incredible SaaS products out there you can patch together, products that you'll be familiar with, like, Zapier, using Airtable, Typeform, whatever it is, and actually building your first product by linking pre-existing products together is a much quicker way to get going, and you shouldn't feel any degree of embarrassment about that. Actually, it's the most optimal thing to do. So
you're proving the concept, aren't you? You're getting what you need in the early days of a business, I always say, is people willing to give you their email address in exchange for something, whether that's a free report or a book or a video or a course or a tool or something like that. Because then if you can gather people that are interested in that as an MVP, then you have something later on you can sell them. Most people, they do it the complete opposite. They spend lots of money, lots of time, lots of energy, effort, resources, a team building something, and then they go out to the market, and then the market doesn't even want it half of the time. So it's about going back, reversing it, first principles, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's very obvious wisdom to people like me and you who've built something, but I think for a lot of people starting off, that's not obvious whatsoever, because most entrepreneurs people look up to are later stage entrepreneurs, or even people who are running publicly listed companies like Elon Musk's or Richard Brand's, and all people see is the proven proprietary technology, the Tesla car or the Virgin aeroplane and the transport system. But actually, when you start, it's better not to have a proven proprietary product, and I didn't realise that when I was 21.
Well, you mentioned the Virgin aeroplane. That's a perfect example, because Richard Branson, he talks about this in his book, Losing My Virginity. The first time he launched his airline was he was at an airport, and his plane got cancelled. So he walked around, and everybody else on the plane had their flight cancelled as well. So in true entrepreneurship style, he wrote on a piece of cardboard, we're going to be flying, from here to this destination, let me know if you're interested. And he got enough people together that were interested that he was able to charter a plane. And he was walking up and down the plane, serving drinks, and back in the day you could probably smoke on planes, and they were having a great time. And that was the start of the airline. So being very scrappy, not spending loads of money on brand and logos and the team and everything. He just did it himself, as a true entrepreneur should be. Let's talk about zero gravity for those that aren't aware of what you do. Just, I guess, give us the elevator pitch, describe what it is in a nutshell.
Sure, so the kind of why behind the business, why found Zero Gravity, is that we have this maxim internally that talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. And we're going to be the business that changes that. So Zero Gravity is a tech platform that powers students from low opportunity areas into top universities and careers. So we've built now proprietary technology that we use to identify talented students whilst they're still at school, the people who on a CV or personal statement might not look like your top 1% of candidates, but when you actually look at their performance in the context of where they're from, are exactly the sort of people that every business and university should want. And then we've built a product experience that optimizes those people's chances of breaking into elite institutions, builds their social capital, their cultural capital, their ability to navigate complex admission systems, builds a network for them, helps them overcome financial constraints. And since launch, we've now supported over 8,000 students from low opportunity backgrounds into highly selective universities, and we've got hundreds now starting internships and grad roles at some of the employers that we work with. So there's a clear mission behind the business, but the business aspect of it is, I think historically people have seen diversity recruitment, social mobility as a kind of charitable endeavour. It used to be something that 10 years ago was run out of corporate CSR departments or university widening participation departments. And it was a little bit of a tick box exercise, but I think things have dramatically changed. There's such a huge drive now for businesses and universities to become more representative of the country, and I think that's partly due to the ESG agenda, partly due to regulatory pressure, but also I think consumers and employees are demanding that their organisations are representative. It's something that Gen Z audience in particular care really deeply about. And I think businesses have also decided to take a different approach to this now, because a lot of them have actually looked at the data within their own workforces and seen that their most productive employees are the ones from sort of working class, low opportunity backgrounds, which is quite intuitive when you think about it. If you're hiring people who've had to overcome insurmountable odds, it probably means they've got a lot of raw talent, they've got a lot of resilience and grit, and those are a lot of the sort of behaviours that will enable you to see in almost any business. So there's a huge report put out by McKinsey at the start of this year that looked at the power of social mobility from a productivity point of view, And some of the partners that we work with, like KPMG, have done these internal workplace analyses and seen that their most productive, the highly progressing senior partners are from these backgrounds. And that's turned this issue, from a kind of social imperative into a commercial one. And what we're trying to build at Zero Gravity is a kind of business solution for employers and universities to be able to tap into a tech platform that gives them access to this incredible talent, but also a way to actively upskill those students and give them a better chance of breaking into their institutions.